Hello, Central Illinois. I'm Renee Haraney, and welcome to the Peoria Professional Show. Each week, I introduce you to a local person that you really need to know. And this week, it's my new friend Leah Nieman. And Leah is an author and a speaker and a consultant. And she helps parents with advice and resources so that you can raise your children with a healthy perspective on technology and social media. Welcome, Leah.
Thanks for having me today.
Yeah, I'm glad you're here. So, what I really want everyone to know about you, I'm just intrigued with what you do. Funny thing is that we met inside of a Facebook group that's not local, but it's a group about using social media for our businesses.
Right.
And so I don't usually check people's profiles, but I did and happened to see that you live like very close to me. You're in East Peoria and I'm in Morton.
Right. Yeah.
And I thought, oh, we've got to meet. We need to know each other.
Yeah.
And so I'm so glad that we did, that we met. But I think what you offer is so unique and so timely and so important for parents, for businesses, but just also it's interesting to everyone. So I wanted to, kind of pick your brain a little bit and find out what you offer so that the community can take advantage of those resources. Sound
Sure.
good?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah, great.
excellent. So first of all, let's just talk about technology and how it affects the families and the communities. What are your thoughts on that?
Right. Well, technology has really changed the way that we work and live and we function as both families and a community. So when you talk about technology, we now function in a networked public. So we're no longer just functioning with our neighbors who we know from church or from school or our neighbors next door. We're able to reach out beyond that. And you and I met because we were in that Facebook group, right?
Right.
But we would live in the same really general location and probably never know each other because of that. So that's what technology's done. It's helped us to go outside of people that we maybe would run into every day, and it's really helped us to expand our friend groups and also to really deepen those because we're able to communicate with each other every day. I tell people when I first met my husband, he was in the Navy and we lived away, so we had like a huge long distance bill if I wanted to stay in touch with my family. But now that my kids are off at college, I can talk to them every day. I can Skype them. We can connect
Right.
live video, so we're able to see facial expressions and, hear and see each other a lot more in depth than what we were through a phone call. And they're able to stay more connected to other members of the family because of technology. So that's really what it's done. It's given us another whole level that we can communicate. And I think sometimes we're so worried about, boxing our kids in that we're not really walking them through how to use it as a tool.
Sure. So every good thing has a challenge.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
So I think we love, especially as adults, we love how technology can make our lives easier.
Right.
Right. But there's also challenges that are new that we
Right.
don't know how to deal with. So even though we may have more Facebook friends and more people that we follow on Twitter and all these things that are great, we also have new needs because of that. So what do you think are the biggest needs that families have these days?
The biggest need, if you really boil it down, is we don't have a plan. So most families, they don't have a plan, and so we're constantly working from behind. We're constantly working from a negative standpoint as a family. So we don't have a plan, so now we have an issue because we don't have a plan for how we're going to handle media in our homes. And that even comes as a point for us as parents because we don't have a plan for how we're ourselves going to deal with media. And so we feel like we're constantly on, and our kids are seeing that. So if we start with a plan, how are we going to handle media? Are we going to come home and we're going to set our devices down so that we can have family dinner time? Are we going to have family time together every Friday where we maybe watch a movie or we have game night and devices are down so that we can, play a game with our kids. What is the standard for how we're going to deal with media in our homes? And if we have a plan for it, now we're controlling. Now we're using media in our home as a tool for productivity and for connection and for developing community, and it's not ruling us.
Okay, I want to hear more about this plan thing, but I have to give you my insights too.
Okay.
So before we started this, we were talking about different generations.
Right.
And when it comes to having this plan, I think you're spot on, because I know my mother is, she has an iPhone, but she's not on social media at all. And so she doesn't have the addiction, right?
Right.
I mean, the phone's always visible, and if someone texts her, she may look to see who texted and so forth, but she doesn't have that compulsion to be distracted from the rest of us.
Right.
Okay. So then there's my generation. And in my generation, we also, everybody has got their phone with them all the time, right?
Right.
And so in my generation, if there's like a lull in the conversation, or if I'm sitting at my mom's kitchen table and she gets a phone call, that's kind of her thing. If the phone rings, oh, I got to get it right now, So she'll get on the phone call, and then I'm just sitting there waiting for her to get off. So I get on Facebook or email or whatever the case may be. I start checking social media. I think what's happening with my mom is she's like, oh, there she is looking at the phone again.
Right. Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, because that's not something that is normal to her. So she notices it in
Right.
me. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Then there's my kids who don't even talk to me because they're so busy scrolling Twitter. I'm like, already now, put your phone down.
Right.
And what I observe, like, just as I'm like out taking a walk in the morning or just driving around, whatever it is, I see, like, my kids are 19 and 23. I'm not a grandparent yet. So I see this behavior in young parents, where they're on their phone, and they've got a 2-year-old that's just kind of wandering off in the yard or whatever it may be. Or I see them out to dinner, and the whole family, they got a 10-year-old and a 14-year-old, and all 4 of them are sitting at a table in a restaurant looking at their phones.
Right.
This has been going on for a long time.
Right.
And it's not getting better. It's getting much worse. So do you have advice on what we can do? I'm particular, not to be selfish, but I'm thinking I want to have an idea before I have grandkids, because then I don't want to have a fight with my kids about how they're looking at their phone when they got a little one.
Right.
So what's your advice there?
Yeah. So number one, it's understanding what we're doing on our phones. So are we using it as an escape? Like, okay, we're at a family event and there's a lull, and so or are we using it to gather people together and do something productive? So here's an example. So I'm at a family event and there's that lull in the conversation, and I'm using it as an escape. So I want to escape. Or I'm at a family event and I'm like, oh, I saw this great project or this something on Pinterest that I want to share with someone. I'm bringing someone into it.
Yeah.
So there's a big difference. And we have to watch that too with our kids, because I've had that moment where I've seen a family member, a teenage family member, on their phone what seemed like, a large portion of the day when they were at my house. And so I entered the conversation and said, hey, can you show me what you're doing? That's important for us to say, hey, can you show me what you're doing? And not make the assumption that they're just escaping. And they were writing. They were on this awesome app, and they were writing a story collectively with other kids their age and reading and stuff. Okay, that's a really awesome thing. It was summer and they were learning some writing skills. So understanding what we're doing with that. So are we using it as an escape to escape the real life moment that we're supposed to be in? So we're at the playground with our kid and we should really be taking part of that moment with our child, but we're escaping? Or are we using it to get something done quickly so that we can join that moment? Like, I'm a working mom and I'm trying to do something really quickly because I'm taking advantage of getting outside with my child. So again, if we have a plan for how we're going to approach media in our homes, we can hone in and take advantage of using technology and social media as a tool. And little things like, when Facebook came along, I loved it because all of a sudden I have all of my family on Facebook. I'm the only member of my immediate family. I'm one of 4 kids that lives out of town. So when I go back to my hometown now, I can immediately let everyone know, hey, we're going to be in these days and these days, and I can plan and let everyone know very quickly where I'm going to be. So that's using social media when I'm on it, but using it in a very productive way. So it's just understanding what we're doing when we're on that and taking very quick little steps to use it as a productivity tool and not as an escape tool.
Right. Oh, my head is swirling. So I was thinking about a couple of times, since back to my mom, I feel like I mention my mom every week, but, like things will come up in conversation and she'll say, what was the name of that person or that, that place we went to or whatever. And instead of thinking, what was that name? What do? I'm holding my phone. I just go and look it up on my phone and instantly I have the answer. But before I get the answer, it takes a few seconds and she's already like, you're always on your phone. So, I mean, I don't know if there's any easy answer as to how we, do that other than to say maybe that we should not judge what other people are doing. Is that what you're saying?
I think so. I think the way we approach the conversation is key, asking questions like, hey, can you show me what you're doing? And then also, like in cases like with your conversation with your mom, say, hey, I want to show you something. Let me show you what I learned. Or, so again, bridging across those generational lines, I think is key sometimes. And asking insightful questions or being willing to show someone something is often eye-opening, especially when it comes to things like technology.
Okay. So I know you are a writer and you have some resources and everything. What kind of resources do you provide for people?
Well, my recent project is a book for parents called Apps All Parents Should Know. I think when we talk about parenting, we know Facebook and Instagram and all of the big ones, even Snapchat, but I think we're really unaware of a lot of apps that our kids do use. Kids want to teens want to hang out where teens want to hang out, right? So they're all on Facebook because that's the wedding. Everyone's at the wedding, right? But they want to hang out where teens want to hang out. So a lot of times I think as parents, we're not aware of a lot of apps where teens are and just being aware of those. So my recent project is Apps All Parents Should Know. And then I also put out a smaller project this year called Tech Talk, or Tech Conversation Cards. So those are just really, it's a printable product. You can put it on a keyring, you can print it, put it in a small box, and that's all about just creating conversation in your home. So asking your kids around the dinner table or while you're driving them to ballet lessons or music lessons, hey, do you ever feel frustrated because someone posts something about you online and, it wasn't true? How does that make you feel, or how do you deal with that? So just asking questions, maybe once a week, get a conversation going with your kids, and you'll be really surprised at the things that they will tell you. And again, it's about having those conversations going on the front end so that when you do have to deal with something with your kids and say, hey, we need to look at this post and maybe see if we need to rephrase that, you've already had a lot of those really good discussions, and your kids know that you're their ally.
Okay. Anybody else feel like they need to take a deep breath? Because I do. But, and then I feel that there's these things where it's like, I wish I had known of these things years ago.
Yeah.
Like you reach a certain point where your kids are now young adults and you think, oh, there's these great resources for younger families that I don't have or whatever. But I think just continuing the conversation is really important.
It is. It's an ongoing conversation. And I've often felt like that. I mean, I've shared with you, my kids are in college and in their 20s now. And I felt very alone when they were 13, 14. And I had many moments of like, I feel like I'm just messing up here, and I'm so glad now that we're having these conversations with our kids younger. And I write a lot about that on on my website. And I'm so encouraged by the young moms that I have conversations with that just say, I want to know everything. I'm not scared of any of these issues. So I really think we've made a lot of strides in being really open and the willingness to talk about these issues, especially with young kids.
So one of those issues you just wrote about this week.
Yes.
And it's sexting.
Yeah.
So I would imagine you probably know what that is.
Yes.
But can you share with us what basically your message was about that?
Yeah, it was really a message of just talking about it. And I learned from talking to my daughter late last year that's an issue, and a lot because we weren't talking about it. So the whole theory of like don't say the word sexting, and oh, for crying out loud, don't say the word porn, because your kid will learn that word and then they'll search it or they'll find out about it and they'll stumble into it. But what we're finding is the culture was talking about that, and they were giving our kids their thoughts on it. So the culture was subtly telling our kids that sexting, everyone's doing it, it's okay. And as parents, we weren't fighting culture. We weren't telling them, no, it's not okay. No, it's not legal. So we were doing nothing to fight culture. And so now we have young adults who are at college and young professionals but they feel very alone. A lot of them don't feel like they can go to their parents and talk to them, or they don't know what to do. They don't, do I go to the police? How do I handle these situations? So we really, really need to talk to our kids about that. They are constantly bombarded with this issue, but they're also constantly bombarded with just informations. And so as parents, we need to be that safe harbor. We need to be that safe place for our kids to come and talk to. And they need to know that they can talk to us about anything and that we're not going to have what I call the shock face.
How do you promise that, Leah?
Yeah. Well, I tell parents all the time, you can have your shock face later. You can go in your room and cry, scream, whatever. But, your initial response to your child is, thank you for telling me. Thank you for confiding in me. And help them work through how to address those situations and handle those situations, and cry in your closet later.
Yeah.
go out with coffee for a friend or whatever. But let your kids know that you are that place of safety and support for them. And so it was really fun. I guess I shouldn't use the word fun, because sexting is not a fun topic, but it was really encouraging for me to write that article with the help of my daughter. Just because I felt like it was something I knew I needed to write about. But the response to that article has been overwhelmingly positive, and that's been encouraging.
Yeah. And it's nice you said you kind of collaborated with your daughter.
Yes.
On that.
Yeah. I mean, there's an exact blurb that we Skyped about, and her saying, yeah, Mom, write about that. And when your 20-year-old tells you, write about that, as a mom, you write about it.
Sure.
So.
Right. Well, okay. So can you tell us, I know you help people wherever they are because you're an internet marketer.
Right.
So to speak. But what can you do specifically? How can you help local families?
So I've spoken here in the community, and I've also counseled with families. So I've had families come to me and say, okay, I have a kid and a child, and they're really, I've done this and I've done that. And so I've counseled with some local families. So that's a way that I can help. Obviously, I write a weekly blog post. I have a newsletter that goes out. My newsletter is all about like, okay, what's the new? So as parents, I think we often feel like we're so much information, but what really applies to families? So I put out a newsletter each week that's like, okay, families, like here's the latest Facebook thing, or here's the latest Instagram update, and this is how your teen may use it, or this is what you need to be updated about. So that's one thing that I do for families. And again, the books and just information and resources on my site is a way that I can help families as well.
Okay, let's talk about live video.
Yeah.
Because that has become such a huge thing. And my focus it's always with businesses. That's how I make a living, is helping them with social media. And so I'm always saying, you got to be on live video. This show is usually live.
Right.
But it's a whole other world when it comes to live video and teens and children.
Right.
So like what kind of advice, because, and here's why I ask this, these people, these business owners who are usually parents, right? I say to them, you got to be doing live video to promote your business. And their answer is always like, oh, ugh, no.
Right.
So if they don't want to even face it themselves, they're probably ignoring this, I would imagine, with their children. What are your thoughts? What would you say to them?
Yeah. So a couple years ago, I wrote an article just about that, live streaming. We're on like a train flying down the tracks and we don't know where it's going to go yet. And then last year I was saying to parents, hey, you need to talk about this with your kids, because the minute, especially Facebook's kind of like the litmus. As soon as Facebook does it, then all of a sudden it's really acceptable. But understanding and making sure your kids understand how public is something. So a lot of kids jump on social media, and because they've been born into a digital world, they don't understand the difference between something that's not digital and digital like we do, because we knew a world before everything was.
Right.
So network publics are by default public. You have to actually usually go in there and make changes in your setting to limit that viewability. So making sure that your kids understand that. So when you get on Instagram, do you want everything public? So when you get on Facebook, have you managed those settings? Because if not, you're literally standing on a stage and broadcasting to everyone. There's where the safety issue lies. So if your teen is by themselves at an event and they're live streaming, their location's known. Everything's
Right.
known. So again, those are the conversations that you want to have with your kids. And even as an adult, if you're live streaming and you're traveling by yourself, so those are having those conversations with your kids is key. So it's not necessarily a yes or no question. It's walking through the settings of the social media platforms with your kids and making sure they understand, okay, we're not ready for a public account yet, or we are, and walking them through. And I like to tell parents, that's why guiding them through social media is so important.
Yeah.
And helping them understand and knowing, okay, we're ready for this now and the next step, and not just saying you can't have it, and then when you can't have it, and then let's just turn on the floodgates and just open the account up wide.
That all sounds wonderful. And then I think about my own relationship with my 19-year-old, and I think me trying to guide him through social media, he would literally laugh in my face.
Yeah, by the time they're 19, they're an adult.
Well,
so,
yeah, but I mean, he was on, I think he was on Facebook before I was, or at least about the same time. And when it comes to technology, they're like, so they advance so quickly.
Right.
Is that a challenge where, you want to, the parent wants to take your advice and guide them, but there's things that they know that we don't even know. So what do you do in that kind of situation?
So that's what I hear from parents a lot. And this is what I tell them. So our kids can use technology just fluidly. They're, again, because they were born into a world. You put an iPad in the hands of a young child, 2 to 4 year old, and they can just instinctively just do it. But we have to remember, social media, and it's a communication tool, right? So what are our teens learning? Our teens, when they hit middle school and high school, they're learning how to behave in public forums. That's what social media is. It's a networked public forum. So our teens know how to use that. They know how to take a photo. They know how to add filters. What they need our guidance with is, what do I do when this spirals out of control? What do I do when I post something on Facebook or Instagram and I'm getting all these comments and it's not going well? That's your value. That's where your kids need you.
Right
there. And so we have so much to offer our teens, and that's where they need our guidance. They need our guidance to figure out balance. They need our guidance to figure out, how do I handle these situations in this networked public?
Awesome. I think that is like a really great place to wrap this up. So all these resources that you have, how can people connect with you?
You can go out to my website. It's leahnieman.com. If you have questions or you need some advice or you're interested in speaking, you can email me. It's leah@leahnieman.com. And then you can also find my page on Facebook. It's just Facebook.com/Leah Nieman.
Okay, excellent. Leah, I really appreciate this. I think that you are just this golden nugget that everyone needs to know about in Central Illinois, and appreciate all of your insight and guidance. You make it sound like, we really can do this. I believe that's true with your help, and also just recognizing that we're not going to handle things perfectly, but at least if we have that intention to really be there to support our kids, they need that even more, than we needed it from our parents, and we did, right?
Right.
So
right. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, I appreciate you so much. Thank you.
Thanks.
And we'll see you next week.
PeoriaLife.com